conférence aura lieu en français.
Hi everyone, the conference will take place in French. So please use your headset. There will be simultaneous translation from Japanese and French. And you'll also be able to follow the conference in English if there are questions. Please raise your hand when you want to ask a question. We will give you the mic. You stand up, ask a question, and then please sit down in order for the next question to be asked. Please keep your mask on. The protocol is in place because of all the reasons you are aware of. Welcome to the press conference for Drive My Car. I will present the talents we have here, starting to my left, with the Taiwanese actress Sonia Juan. Sonia, who plays the role of Janice in Drive My Car, but who also plays Elena in Uncle Vanya, Chekhov's play, within the film. Please applaud to her left, Toko MIURA,
qui est également une actrice japonaise, une
who is a Japanese singer and actress. She released an album in 2020. She is in a film by Ryusuke Okita.
Et je vais vous demander maintenant d'applaudir.
I want to ask you to applaud to her left, the director, Ryusuke HAMAGUCHI.
C'est la deuxième participation en compétition.
It's his second time in official competition for Ryusuke HAMAGUCHI. He came in 2018 with Asako 1 and 2. He is a filmmaker you probably knew with Happy Hour. And this year at the Berlin Festival, he showed his film and received the Grand Prix. To his left, please applaud Reika KIRISHIMA, who is also an actress with a long filmography, and who has played in a film called The Norwegian Wood in 2010, which was already an adaptation of a novel by Haruki Murakami. To her left, the producer, Teruhisa Yamamoto, who has a long history of producing, including on TV, and who was also one of the producers for Asako 1 and 2. Hamaguchi-san's film, which was already in competition in Cannes in 2018. I will start straight off by asking a question so that you can then ask your own questions. A question to Ryusuke HAMAGUCHI. The stories are very important in your films. The stories are echoes to the lives of the characters. In Murakami's novel, which you decided to adapt, or rather his short story, decided to adapt, is also an echo to your own life and your own questioning as a filmmaker.
Hi. まずこんなにお集まりいただいて本当にありがとうございます。
Yes, first of all, I wanted to thank you to have been so many to come to this press conference. The first time that I read Drive My Car, the short story, it was in 2013. It was a friend of mine who suggested I should read it because he thought I would enjoy it. There were indeed elements which were familiar to me, drama, acting, and as the title says, Drive My Car, cars, vehicles. I think the inside of a car is a very good environment for intimate conversations. I have a personal experience of this, and I had already explored this in other films. And I think that in this film, Kafuku and Misaki, in this closed space of the car, they connect and their relationship develops, and I think their intimacy also increases, and that relationship already existed in the original short story, and I think it is at the heart of this film.
Non, justement, cette question de l'habitacle de la voiture est très
The
importante.
interior of a car is very important
L'intimité, la façon dont
with regards to
entre les
the
personnages.
way that the intimacy is going to grow between the characters.
C'est-à-dire comment
What question did you ask yourself as a filmmaker? How did you decide to film inside the car? We see that the scenes are very different in this regard. There is a camera angle which is not always the same according to the scene, especially at the end when the main character talks with the young actor. They are looking at each other face to face. How did you film this in terms of the direction?
車の中で一体どういうふうな関係性が築かれていくかっていうことはやっぱりすごくその映像にする上
In
で
the car,
その原作では
being in the car,
美咲はずっと助手席隣にあって座って
of
いる
course, it is very important to stage this very precisely.
例えば弟は
The two characters in the short story are sat side by side right from the start, but I wanted their relationship to evolve and that we should see that in the car as well.
なので美咲と
It had to be very specific.
これはもう前後の関係にまずな
The
る
first time that they meet,
高槻っていう
of course, Kafuku and Misaki are one face to the other.
その前方を見ていた人たちが
we have
お互いに見つめ合う
Kasuki, who is
ある
an
種の対決
exterior personality,
でその対決みたいなものを通じて
there is a confrontation.
隣に座るようになるそうやって
The two characters are like adversaries who are looking at each other.
配置から生まれるっていうふうには
And finally, Kafuku will come to the front of the car as his relationship with Misaki evolves.
読売新聞の浅川と申します。先ほどのお話にちょっと絡めつつなんですけれども、
Earlier, you were already mentioning the inside of the car
昨日2回目見たんですけど、
and the way that you staged the filming inside the car. I watched the film yesterday for the second time, and when Kafuku sits in the passenger seat, my heart started to pound.
それでまた引き込
An
む。
emotion arose in me at that
そ
time,
れ以外にお伺いしたいんです
and this
が、
was
原作とその
an additional reason to re-enter the film.
いわゆる
In the original short story, the shape and the color and the model of the car are different.
何かその
Why did you choose a different model of car?
もっと違ったことなのかというところ
Was it for
ですね。
stage reasons?
さんに
And another question,
日本
a
人
question to Sonia Juan.
いわゆる
I asked the question yesterday to the Japanese actor, but I would like to have your opinion on the direction
立ち入って
of Mr. Hamaguchi,
ユアンさんのセ
a
リフ
very mechanical reading of the text.
非常に
You say at a moment in the film that we are not robots.
女優さんご自身としてそれをどう捉えていた
I would like to know how, as an
そ
actress,
れをどう捉えていたか
you experienced this.
と思います。
最初にその車のことについて原作ではその
First of all, I will answer the question about the car. As you say, in the short story, it was a yellow cabriolet.
色も
It was the same make, Saab 900, but the color and the shape were
映
different.
画化の許諾を取る際に村上春樹さんに
Initially,
差し上げたんですけれど
when I contacted Haruki Murakami, I wrote him a letter to ask him for the rights for cinema adaptation.
お伝えしましたそれが
And I had already warned him that I would probably not be able to keep the model that he had chosen in his short story.
オープンカーだと当然風が強いので
The words spoken by the actors are very important inside the car. And with a cabriolet, of course, the dialogues would not have been able to be used as such, and that would have been a shame, in my opinion.
またその
And so it was difficult to keep a cabriolet for the
自
film.
然の中を走っていくことによって風景が見えていくっていうそういうある種の
Also,
構想もあっ
when
た
the car is going through the city and
おそらくそんな
through
に
the
映
countryside,
像にした時に目立って
visually, we needed to see the background going past. The car needed to be very visible against the backdrop, and I think the yellow would not be so visible. That's why I chose red, which is a brighter color.
もう劇用車の会社の社長の方がじゃあとはいえ最初
There is also that the person who rented us the car
赤いサーブを乗ってこられて
initially suggested that I should go and have a look at the yellow cabriolet as it is in the short story, but when I saw the red model, it was a very well-maintained car, and I preferred it to the yellow cabriolet. And so the whole team and I were perfectly sure that we needed this red model. And Monsieur Muto, who lent us the car, finally lent us the red car. The question which was put to Sonia Juan.
So when we first started doing the book readings, it was an unusual experience. I've never had book readings so densely, so intensely, and repetitively. And of course, like my character Janice, you can't help but wonder why we're doing it in this very mechanical sort of way. And it was the first time I've ever done a book read like that. And then we would repeatedly do a lot of book readings and then finally move into blocking. And even the blocking, I think in the beginning it was quite precise and mechanical. But I think because the director's the way he communicates, it just gives, at least for me, I had, for some reason, like an 100% or more kind of trust in him. And so I would just try to follow and try to see what I could find from this method. And the best part with his directing is that he gives you full freedom when you actually start performing in front of the camera. And so for me, the repetitive book reading, it helped with memorizing your lines really, really well to the point where it becomes muscle memory. And then kind of like how it was in the movie, the text starts resonating within you, and then you get to feel different things, because at that point, you don't have to think about acting with the lines. It just comes naturally. And even the movements, you know within what boundaries you can do, and the rest is just, he'll encourage you to react how you actually feel. And so it was a really, really wonderful experience. Thank you.
Madame.
日本のジャーナリストの石津と申します。素晴らしい3時間を昨日過ごせたのですが、皆さんにまずじゃあ監督にはキャスティングをインターナショナルなキャスト
interpreter is not hearing the
日本の
translation
キャスト
from
も含め
Japanese
て
to
なんです
French
が
and cannot
イ
translate
ン
it
ター
to
ナショナルな
English.
キャスティングをどのような経緯でされていったのかということで、そしてキャストのお三方にはこの作品で
Apologies from the
自
interpreter
分
who
が何
cannot
か
hear the
開眼し
Japanese
た
to French
何か
translation in
今ま
order
でと
to
違
be
う
able
経
to
験
give
目覚めがあったというこ
English
とがあったら
version.
教えてください。
キャスティングに関しては、本当に見ていただいた方皆さんが同意してくれると信じておりますが、本当に素晴らしくうまくいっていると思っています。で、キャ
I'm
スティン
sure
グで
you
一
will
番大事なのは本当
be
にその
in
役に合う
agreement with me to say that the casting in this film is fantastic. I really tried to choose
ただ
characters
インターナショナルなその
that I liked,
っていうのは、実際本当に
actors
我
whom
々
I
の
like
経
who
験がなか
seemed
った
to fit the characters in the
手
film.
探りでした
We had no experience
韓国に
in
関して
terms
は
of
元々は韓国で
international
撮影する予定
casting.
があったので、
With
そこも
regards to
兼ねて
Korea,
実際にキャスティング、オーディション
As
のように
I initially thought I would be filming in Korea, I did a bit of casting in Korea, but finally I chose the three Korean actors who appear in the film.
ソニア・ユアンさんと
With regards to
リ
Taiwan
リゾンさんはオンラインの Zoom でのオーディションになりました。最
and
初は本当に
for
そのオン
the
ライン
Filipino actor, we did Zoom
不安
casting.
はあったんですけれども、やっぱり
I was wondering whether it would be sufficient to see the actors through the screen, but in fact we were able to see the face and the voice, and I think you can still visualize the personality even on a screen, and I think the casting was a great success.
Madame. Oui.
そうですね。撮影に入る前に本読み
Before starting filming,
リハーサルをこう重ねてきて、
did rehearsals and
本
we
読みの内
read
容っていうのも 私が今までやったことの
And
な
the
い
content
感
of
情を
what we
入れる
read
っていう方法だ
was
ったので
completely different to what I was used to up until
どうい
then,
うことが起きるのかっていうのは
because
最
we
初自分では
needed to read without putting any emotion in. I didn't know what this was meant for initially. I was being asked to read in a very mechanical way, as
まあこれは私だけかもしれないですけど
requested.
普段撮影に入る
Maybe I was the only one to have this feeling, but usually when I start filming,
してしまうというか
I always have an
演技をするんですけ
intention.
ど何か
I intend to act in such a way. Of course, I'm always acting, but there is always part of me which is actively, intentionally trying to act out the emotions. But here, having done all these readings without putting in any emotion,
持ってい
this
けるとい
became
うか
very natural finally.
何かそこに自分の中
It
に
is
と
much
ても
more
静か
linear.
な何かが流れ始めていて
But there is something very calm and serene and fluid which
シンプルで
transpires through us, and
すごく扱うのもこう
every
大
part
切
of
に
the
思えてくる
dialogue
という
comes out very simply, but also very
芝居をするとい
profoundly.
う前に
And that also makes the dialogue seem precious to
すごく
us.
静かにこう自分の
And
中で
before acting out the emotions
起き始めるというか
from
変化が
within,
起き始めて
these emotions start to take life and form within us. And that experience,
で
at
これ
least
は
for me,
とても私は今
is
貴
an
重な
experience that I hadn't had
経
before.
験をさせていただいててで
So for
この
me,
お仕事
this was
始
a
めて
very
まあ20年以上
precious
経ってるんですけ
experience.
どまだまだ
I have
経験していない
been
こと
working for several decades already as an actress, but there are still several things which I have not yet experienced, and I still have a lot left to discover.
この経験がこれからの
And it is thanks to this film that I realized
生か
this.
せるって
I also think that this film will
あの
allow
こういう意
me
味だったり
to approach the next film very differently,
参加させていた
and
だ
that is thanks to these readings and to the rehearsals for this
素晴らし
film.
い経験になりましたね。ありがとう。
It was a magnificent experience.
Comme MIURA, peut-être, sur cette question du rapport au cinéaste.
So coming back to this question about the relationship with the filmmaker.
お芝居をするにあたって心の状態を
When we act,
体が自然と
the fact that we are psychologically prepared
っていうことと
means that our body naturally follows
その時の
the mind.
体に
A
引っ張られ
physical
て
preparation also allows us to condition our emotions and our soul.
感じていて
At least that's what I personally
改
feel.
めてその自分の体
And
の状態
specifically
が
for this film,
引っ張ってくるんだっていう方を
I realized that the state of my body
それは
had a big impact on my soul and my emotions, and I really noticed this
話されて
during the
やっぱ
filming.
り音声に対してすごくこだわって
As
準
was
備され
saying
て
Mr. Hamaguchi earlier, sound and voice are very important for Mr. Hamaguchi, especially during the readings.
ちゃんとこう相手の
There is a
心を
lengthy preparation during which
使わせてもらっていて
we create a voice which allows us to have an impact on the actors we are working with. This will
自
change
身の耳でも自分の声を聞いてるわけだから
actors' personification, but we are also listening to our own voice when we speak,
あの
and that also changes our emotions.
歌っている時にはなんかそういうこと
I
を感じたことが
am
あって
also a singer,
あお
and
芝居の現場
when
でもそ
one
れって
sings,
感じられるんだってい
or
うの
when
は
I sing, I
浜口さん
had already felt this kind of thing. And thanks to Mr. Hamaguchi and his direction, I realized that this was also possible in cinema.
Madame.
朝日新聞の佐藤です。素敵な映画ありがとうございました。公式上映から一夜明けて、
Thank you for this beautiful film.
だと思いますけど、まあそういうどんな声が入っているの、来ているのか。
One night has already passed since the official screening. Have you had any echoes from the film critics? And how do you receive them?
そんなに分かっていないというのは
Since I
そうなんですけれども、その海外の取材も受けていて、
have
まあね、
Since I got up, all I've had time to do is to do interviews. So I haven't had time to read what has been written since yesterday. But even through the interviews, I realized that
認めていただいたんだなという
the acclaim was very positive.
ところはあります。まあ、こ
I
れからい
feel
ろんな
that the film has been well received.
目にすることになるので、まあ、多少こわごわと
I'm sure I will be reading reviews to come, and I'm a little apprehensive, but I'm also
Une
impatient.
question au producteur du film qui est ici sur la façon dont
I would like to ask a question about the way which the film was edited and produced from this novel, rather short story by Haruki Murakami. Perhaps you could talk to us about the difficulties you encountered as a producer. I also have a question about the end of the film. After Sonia's monologue, the end of the film takes place in Korea, if I've understood correctly. The characters are wearing masks. I was wondering whether this scene had been filmed after the rest of the film and when it was filmed.
はい。まず一つ目、映画の立ち上げですよね。これは
First of all,
村上春樹作品である
with regards to the film editing,
でも冷めてもで、カンヌ国際映画祭に選んでいただいて、商業的にも
the fact that it was adapted from a short story by Mr. Murakami, and the fact that Mr. Hamaguchi was selected, nominated in Cannes in 2018, made me think that it would be quite easy, but in the end it turned out to be quite difficult. Bitter's End, which was the production company represented by Mr. SADAI, nevertheless financed us and helped us very spontaneously. And another company also came in to help, and that allowed us to launch the production of this film. With regards to my collaboration with Mr. Hamaguchi, it is our second film together.
正しい評論がプロデューサーができるかというと、またそれは別の問題なんですけど、私が言える
I'm not sure I can really comment on the direction or the filmmaker's role as a producer myself, but I think his way of working influences my way of working, and I think he is someone who is always reinventing himself. There are two main elements which form the basis of his work. A sense of justice, balance, and insatiable curiosity. I think equality is something which we can acquire through experience and experiments, trial and error. The fact that this equality should be very sincere, this desire for equality, is something which is unique to him and is exceptional, and which also inspires me. It is this curiosity, this desire to know and to acquire knowledge, which drives him, and I hope that we will be able to continue to work together for many years with Mr. Hamaguchi. With regards to Korea, as Mr. Hamaguchi was saying earlier, we were initially meant to film in Busan. Unfortunately, because of the coronavirus, that was impossible, and in the end, we decided to replace the scenes which were meant to be in Busan by Hiroshima. And during the script writing, Mr. Hamaguchi insisted on there nevertheless being one scene filmed in Korea, at least for the final sequence of the film. And I said that I wasn't certain that this would be possible given the conditions. But in the end, we decided to open out the film on this new life, Misaki's courage to start a new life, and that this could happen in Korea. In reality, the shooting did not actually take place in Korea. It was a collaboration with a Korean production company, and all the images which were shot, including the ones of Misaki in the car, were in fact filmed in Japan. The images in the supermarket were also shot in Japan. And I think that Mr. Hamaguchi was very happy to realize that you thought that it was filmed in Korea.
Thank you very much. I'm from China, and I read the novel of the novel that you adapted this movie from, and I'm very curious about the scene that happened in Hokkaido because that wasn't in the novel. And I wonder what is the intention that you add that scene to the film, and also because the role of Misaki, she did mention something about her past, but she didn't elaborate, and why you let her elaborate her own story with Kafuku. That's my question. Thank you.
はい、この場面っていうのは、次第にできていったところがあります。その脚本を書いていって、そのプロット段階から、その岬の
When I was writing the screenplay, right from the synopsis,
考えてはいました。ただその脚本を書くのと合わせて、
to go to Hokkaido and that she should come from
ど
there.
ういうその経緯があってここにいるのかっていうことを、やっぱり自分なりに考えておかな
Yet Misaki or the other
キャラクタ
characters,
ーのバックストーリーみたいなものも
I really thought that at the time of adapting this short story, we should be able to describe the past of these characters, where they came from and what they had done up until then.
バックストーリーの
And that's what I did, especially
実際にその本
for
編の内容と
Otto,
響き合ってくるような気がして
the wife,
そのサブテ
who
キ
in
スト
fact
的なもの
doesn't
が
appear in the short story.
その中に流れ込ん
But
で
we
い
needed a
る
subtext.
のが起きてます。これはでもやっぱりそのなぜ家福は
I think I
岬
managed
に
to
これだけのことを言え
find
るのか
a
岬はなぜ
subtext
それを
within the short story which allowed me
随
to
分若い
develop the
この
characters.
女性
I
が
wondered why
そういう
Misaki
ものを引き出すことがで
and
きるのか
Kafuku,
考えた
who
時に
is
彼女
more
が
aged
何か
than
一
her,
回死ぬような
would be
一回
able
死んでいる
to
人
have an influence
という
one
よう
on
なイ
the
メージ
other.
がありました。どこかで一回その死のようなものをくぐり抜けた人だからこのような言葉を引き出せるんだっていうことは考え
Almost
て
died.
それが北海道の場面には
And in a way, it's as though he was able to draw out dialogue from her right along their journey to Hokkaido.
共同通信の安藤と申します。監督に伺いたいんですが、この作品
I would like to put a question to Mr. Hamaguchi. In this film, communication is a very important theme.
一方で言葉が違っても
The dialogue, the words
ものがあるというメッセージを受け取ったんですが、
are
その言葉によらない頼らない
filmed in a very attentive manner, and yet I feel that there is communication which is not necessarily based on words and which seems to emerge within this film, and I'd like you to say a little more about this. I also wanted to know whether you felt that this work that you had done had made it to another international festival.
大間違いというところがありますよね。言葉がむしろ
Talk does not necessarily mean to communicate, to understand one another.
言葉によって
Sometimes talking can prevent communication. Exchanging information by exchanging words is always possible. But there are sometimes elements or meanings which you no longer see because they are hidden behind words, and that is something which I often see. Therefore, this way of communicating without only using words, even though films are usually very talkative,
そういう考えが多分こ
I
の
think
映画の
this is
中
not
の多
something
言
which has happened very
にもなって
often.
いるんじゃないかと思います。で、その中で自
That's
分が
why
得たものっていう
I
と、
treated language in a
本
different
当にやっぱり
manner.
そうだなっていうことを改めて実感したっていう
That having
例え
used
ば
an
ソニアさんの
international
演技であるとか
cast
その韓
and
国手話を使っている
multinational
得意な演
actors
技であるとかを
to have made
言語や手話を全然分からず
putting
に
on
見ているわけですけ
a
れども、
multinational
それでも彼女たちの中から湧き起こって
and
くる感
with
情みたいなものを
a
見て
Korean
取ることが
actress
で
and
きるし、
sign
それを
language
よく見たりよく
and
聞い
actors
たり
and
すれ
actresses
ば
of other countries, I
感じ
think
るこ
that
とができる。
reveals something
まあ
about what
一
they
方でよ
are
く見られたり
within
よく
themselves.
聞かれたりすれ
And
ば
I
その
think if
言
we
葉の
go
裏にあるものを
beyond
簡単に読み
language,
取
we
られて
can
しまう
perceive
と
a
いうことも
lot of
怖さと
what
しては
is perhaps lying to the basis of each of the characters.
で
I think
映画祭の反応を見て
can
も
always
と
be
もと映画
difficult
って
to
本
just
当
stop
に
at
その
language.
字
And when
幕
we
がつ
see
い
the
て
reactions
言
at
葉
this
が分からなくても
international
一緒に見られるよ
festival,
うになって
of
いて
course,
でいつもそ
when
の
we
映画祭
screen a
で
film, there are always subtitles such that anyone from any country is meant to be able to watch the film. But when people say, "Oh, I really liked such and such an actor's
今回
playing,"
そういう気持ちはすごく
the
の中で薄れるというか言語が分か
I
らない
always think this is odd because he hasn't actually understood the language. They haven't actually understood what they were saying, and yet
あるんだなということを思っています。
the is always a point of view which goes beyond the language and the text, which allows one to judge the value of an actor.
Mademoiselle Sonia Juan, puisque vous jouez une scène Lena dans la pièce Oncle Vanya, et vous jouez avec Sonia, qui elle s'exprime des signes.
And you are playing with an actress who is using sign language, and you are playing in Mandarin. How did you prepare this scene? How did you manage to communicate? How did you manage to play this scene despite the different languages?
So actually that scene, when I first read the script, that was the scene I was most worried about because actually when in preparing the role, the director didn't give me much direction on playing Janice, but he just told me to focus on me as an actor, how I would prepare for Yelena. And so I put most of my attention in preparing for the Vanya script. And in the Vanya script, that scene for Yelena is also quite a difficult scene. And so I've never done theater acting before. So before going into the crew, when I was still in Taiwan and preparing, I worked with my acting coach. And he is also a really dear friend of mine. And he helped me put together like a mini home theater. We gathered around 20 friends and we had like a mini theater debut of that scene. And so I went into filming with Hamaguchi-san feeling prepared, but when I arrived at in Tokyo the first day when we did the book reading, that like completely destroyed all of my preparation because the direction was completely different. But it was a little nervous. I was really nervous at first because I was trying to fit what I had prepared in with his direction, but then I gave up because I spoke with my teacher and he said, I think you should just trust your director and do what he tells. And so I basically took all that away and then we did a lot of book readings together with Yurim, the girl who plays, the actress who plays Yuna. And when we did the book readings, she would sign, and I think sign language is very interesting in the sense that you don't have to understand every single sign, but you can understand the gist of it because that's the only way she can express those words. And so that intent to communicate becomes very strong. And so even though we had recordings available, like they recorded her sign language so I could review it afterwards, but I think I rarely needed that. And then finally, after many book readings, we moved together with Hamaguchi-san's blocking. And the blocking at first was just in like a regular empty room. And so we were free to go anywhere. But then when we arrived on set, where you see inside the park, there's the scene where we're looking at each other through the tree. And that was a particular framing that the director wanted. And so it was interesting because he would give you limitations, but at the same time give you a lot of freedom to play around with those things. And so I hope that answered your question.
Oui, merci. Madame.
Hello, Kuriko Sato from Japan, eiga.com. The question to Mr. Ryusuke Hamaguchi. 映画コムなどで、ライターをしておりますパリ在住のジャーナリストの佐藤栗子と申します。浜口監督に質問です。
I have a question for Mr. Hamaguchi.
演じた高月という役柄が
Okada Masaki
かなり大胆に
is it playing a role called Masakuchi?
特に
Masatuki?
暴力的なキャラクター
You described him as an extravagant, somewhat violent character, and his presence
として生きることの難しさみたいなものがかなり
as a celebrity, his presence allows us to tackle the theme of the difficulty of being a celebrity in Japan. And I wondered why you wanted to describe him as such a character. As I decided that Kyafuku would be a director, He needed to be a director in order for him to be invited to a theatre festival. In the original short story, Katsuki is closer in age to Kafuku, and they both meet in the bar over a drink. But for the film, it seemed tricky to repeat the sequence in a bar in terms of the narrative. I think this would have slowed down the narrative too much. And I think this relationship with Takatsuki and Kafuku is one of the most interesting of the film. There is, of course, this relationship of director and actor. And I thought what would enrich their relationship would be also this reciprocal relationship of actor and director. I also decided to be an actor. With regards to Takatsuki's violence in the original short story, when he drinks, he finds it difficult to control himself. That already existed in the original character. I don't really like to write characters who become violent when they are drunk. And therefore, I knew that he had to have a self-destructive potential in the film, but I wanted it to come from something different than alcohol, hence this violent incident with someone else. The fact that he hit someone, that is finally what will lead him to his own destruction.
こんにちは、フリーライターの林と申します。山本プロデューサーと、浜口監督に。
I would like to put a question to the producer, Mr. Yamamoto and Mr. Hagamuchi. This is a magnificent film. It is an ota film, which is extremely long, and I think that from the point of view of production, it must have been quite tricky. I would like to know what your feelings are. What is your secret to produce such a film and bring it to Cannes? And for you, Mr. Hamaguchi, my question is, well, Happy Hour was already a very long film. Pont du Hasard et autres fantaisies, this a series of 3 shorts. There is something very free in your work. I get the feeling that you want to break the norms of the average length of a film today. Thank you. First of all, I will answer my question. Yes, in the end, the film is 3 hours long. Initially, or rather, it's ended up much longer than was initially imagined. But in Japanese cinema, to produce a film, or rather to produce a film in Japan, is quite difficult because outside of the big blockbusters and mainstream cinema, it is very difficult to make films. I think that there is a big imbalance between the possibility of making these mainstream films and different films. It is a belief that I hold dear. I want the film to be what the director wants it to be. I therefore need to trust the director. And in this instance, the fact that I had continued to work with Mr. Hamaguchi since his previous film made me certain that I needed to support him and that I should do everything possible to allow him to direct the film, to make the film that he imagined and that he wanted. With regards to the film's length, I even wonder myself why it ends up this length. I would love to be able to make a 90-minute or 120-minute film. As an avid cinema-going myself, I like cinema of that kind of format. But when I make a film, I admit that I can never end up content with such a length, because I always try to resolve the themes which emerge for each of the characters. How to ensure that the viewer understands where the character comes from, what questions he holds within him, and how he resolves them. My aim is always to try to lead my characters home. And initially, I don't know where they will end up. I don't know where the film will take them. If I am able to give my imagination free rein like this, it is thanks to my producer, Mr. Yamamoto, and all the rest of my team. When I realized the film would be 3 hours long, I showed it to him and I said, I'm really sorry, but I think this is the necessary length. And Mr. Samahi from Bitter Ends, which part financed the film, and also another producer, who is Mr. Yamamoto's superior, Mr. Kubuta, also watched the film, and they came back to me saying, yes, we are in agreement. From what they said, they met up in the loo after having met up with me, and they said, yes, it is true, there is not much that we can cut from this film, it will be difficult. But I am convinced that for me as a film, the value of the film is also linked to its length for this project. I truly believe that the film needed this time in order for the story to unroll.
たびたびすみません、朝日新聞です。3年前のカンヌの寝ても覚めてもと、ベネチア。
3 years ago, you were in Cannes for Asako. In Venice, there was the screenplay that you co-wrote with Mr. Oshawa, and then there was Berlin. You have come back to Cannes this year. What do international film festivals represent in your career? With regards to Wife of a Spy, I co-wrote the screenplay, and Mr. Kurosawa's direction was fundamental to the film's success. And so I'd like to put this a little aside. With regards to international festivals, I have always worked in an independent way, and I think the festivals have allowed my career to take off. At the start of my career, I made films which were not successful at the box office and which I never managed to finance. But the teams for the international festivals would nominate them or would encourage me to show them to as many cinema goers as possible. And so for me, the festivals have been a great support and encouragement. And it is often thanks to the festivals that my films have been able to be distributed to cinema theaters. I feel that it is the festivals which have allowed me to become the filmmaker I am today. And if there is anything I can do to thank them, to give them back what I owe them, I will do all I can. Thank you for your participation, and please applaud the whole film crew from Drive My Car.